The flashing red and blue lights cut through the night as Marcus pulled his rig to the side of a lonely highway. He didn't know this stop would change everything. A corrupt cop, drunk with power, saw a black man behind the wheel and decided that was reason enough. Within minutes, Marcus was handcuffed, accused, and humiliated, all for a crime he didn't commit. But what the officer didn't realize was that Marcus wasn't just any truck driver, and the secret he carried would soon bring the FBI straight to that same doorstep. What happens when justice meets corruption head-on? Marcus Daniels had spent most of his life on the open road. Miles of concrete, long nights, and quiet radio stations were his peace. To him, trucking wasn't just a job, it was freedom. Every sunrise reflected off his windshield felt like proof that he'd built an honest life, 1 mile at a time. A man of few words, he believed in hard work, in staying out of trouble, and in doing what was right, even when the world didn't always return the favor. But behind his calm eyes was a man who'd seen enough to know how easily justice could turn its back. He had once worked with federal investigators, a chapter of his life he kept locked away for his own safety. Now he just wanted quiet roads, steady pay, and to return home to his family after every haul. On that chilly evening, as he crossed county lines carrying a shipment of construction equipment, the highway was empty. The hum of his engine filled the night air. He didn't know a single patrol car sitting just a mile ahead would soon shatter that peace. Or that the man, inside, it had his own agenda, the flashing lights in his rearview mirror didn't just signal another traffic stop. They signaled the moment his ordinary life would collide with corruption, prejudice, and a truth powerful enough to shake the system. Marcus slowed his truck and pulled onto the shoulder as the red and blue lights painted his mirrors. He had nothing to hide, or so he thought. The officer approached with a smirk that carried arrogance more than authority. His tone was sharp, condescending, and loaded with assumptions. Every question felt less like procedure and more like accusation. When Marcus handed over his license and papers, the officer didn't even glance at them before tossing them aside. "Step out of the vehicle," he barked. The chill of the night bit through Marcus's jacket as he stepped down from the cab, hands visible, movements calm. Years of living as a black man in America had taught him that calmness could mean survival, but this cop didn't want calm. He wanted control. Within minutes, backup arrived. Another cruiser, then another. Flashlights pierced the darkness as officers searched his truck, tearing through every compartment. Boxes were opened, cargo scattered across the cold asphalt. Then came the shock, a small bag of white powder found near the driver's seat. Marcus froze. He knew what that meant. His voice trembled as he tried to explain, but his words meant nothing against their badges. The radio crackled with fake updates, codes and numbers that painted him as a suspect. One of the officers grinned. "Looks like we've got ourselves a drug runner." The laughter that followed burned more than the cuffs that bit into his wrists. As the cameras rolled, body cams conveniently turned off, Marcus's mind raced. He had been careful, always. He had once helped the FBI put away men just like these, men who wore the uniform but had no honor. And now, here he was, framed in the same system he once trusted to protect him. But Marcus wasn't powerless. The cargo he carried wasn't ordinary freight. It was part of a federal transport job tied to a sealed FBI operation. Every detail of his trip, every checkpoint, every timestamp had been tracked. He knew the truth would surface, but until then, he had to survive the night. As the police car pulled away, sirens fading into the distance, Marcus stared out the window, heart pounding. Somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The same system that tried to bury him was about to dig its own grave, and when the truth came knocking, it wouldn't be gentle. The cold metal of the jail bench pressed against Marcus's back as the hours crawled by. His wrists throbbed from the cuffs that had been too tight, his clothes still smelling of diesel and humiliation. Every officer who passed threw him the same look, that quiet, poisonous smirk that said they believed the lie. The evidence was found, the paperwork filed, and his voice drowned in the noise of corruption. When the sheriff finally entered, it wasn't with justice. It was with mockery. "You people never learn," he said, slamming a folder onto the table. Photos, bagged drugs. A story they had already written without him. Marcus stared at the table, heartbeat steady, eyes burning but unbroken. He had been through worse, and he knew something they didn't. As the sheriff turned to leave, the door suddenly opened. A man in a dark suit stepped in, quiet, calm, commanding. He flashed a badge that froze the room. FBI. "Marcus Daniels," the agent said. "We've been tracking this route." "We know everything." The smirks vanished. The color drained from the sheriff's face. Within seconds, the air shifted from arrogance to fear. The agent laid down a stack of documents, timestamps, transport logs, federal clearances, proof that Marcus was under FBI protection, transporting confidential materials for an ongoing investigation. The room fell silent. The same men who mocked him now avoided his eyes. One officer whispered, "Oh my God," as realization dawned. The man they framed wasn't their victim, he was their exposure. Every second of their corruption, every falsified report, every planted piece of evidence was about to be turned against them. Marcus didn't smile. He simply looked up at the sheriff, the weight of truth behind his steady gaze. "You wanted to make an example," his eyes seemed to say. "Now you are one." In the days that followed, the headlines told a story very different from the one those officers tried to create. Body cam footage that had been lost was recovered by federal investigators. The drugs they claimed to find? Planted. The reports they filed? Fabricated. Every lie unraveled, piece by piece, under the same system they once used to destroy others. Marcus was cleared of every charge. But the damage and the fear, the humiliation, the memory of cold steel on his wrists would never fully fade. He didn't celebrate his vindication. He simply exhaled, knowing that for once the truth had a voice louder than prejudice. The officers involved were stripped of their badges, facing the same justice they had denied him. Yet, Marcus knew this was only one story in a world full of them. One man's proof that racism in power doesn't just wound reputations. It crushes lives, but it also proves something else, that courage, even in silence, can shake the walls of corruption. He returned to the open road, the hum of his truck now a reminder of endurance. Every mile became a quiet testament to those who never got their apology, never got their freedom, never got their justice. Because in the end, Marcus's story wasn't just about one man framed. It was about a system that keeps testing how much truth people can bear before they break. And maybe that's the real question. How many more Marcus Daniels will it take before we finally see what justice is supposed to look like?